we'll let folks in, but thanks everybody for showing up tonight. There's been quite a bit of background interest in this software. I don't even call it new, but I've had a few of the newer AISIG members come up and say, "What do you know about N.I.N.A?" I'm going, not a hell of a lot. I generally send, as a rule, send them off to either the website or the Discord group, which is really, really active. I think the big thing that everybody has figured out is that it's extremely useful, it's extremely versatile, it's very approachable, and more than anything else, it's free and open sourced. So it has a huge amount of software developers and people building core modules for this thing, which are really, really powerful. And if I remember at this time about 15 years ago, there's a funny little piece of software that came out called Pix Insight. And I used to host little AISIG meetings at my office in Miramar. And everybody's going, well, this ought to be really, really cool. And I think this at this point, N.I.N.A is probably way beyond the beginnings of Pix Insight, but it seems like a good idea for people to jump in and start giving some ideas about the way it's used. Tonight is just going to be Richard, Jerry, Scott, Izu, and Wes have all volunteered to be, to give us some ideas about how they use it. But this meeting's just an open discussion. It's questions, throw out questions at any time. Hopefully we'll get a feel for it, and we'll see at the end of this thing. I think we'll try to figure out if having some more AISIG meetings specific to N.I.N.A might be worthwhile. So Richard, you want to jump in? Tell us why you've been using this thing?
Yeah. Can I share my screen?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
David, what
somebody else is sharing already.
This is here. What operating system does it operate on, work on?
Pretty good on Windows.
It's Windows only. That's
Windows,
it.
okay. Thank you.
It's going to be cloud-based soon.
Okay, can everybody see the start?
Yep.
I labeled this how I use N.I.N.A, and gave my name and email address and telephone number if people want to contact me. But it looks like I might be the rookie in the room. So my rig, I set up in my backyard in Poway. I have a very limited view of the sky, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I've got an ASCAR 65 PHQ, which is 416 millimeters, ZWO guide scope, AM5N. I use the electronic focuser from ZWO. In fact, all my stuff is ZWO except my flat panel. My flat panel is an ASCAM wireless flat panel that I've built following some instructions I found online. And that's the main reason I use N.I.N.A, because with all these ASI stuff, I could use, just forgot the name of it, ASI Air. And I recently added a really cool control box called an RB Focus Gaius S2. And that has its own ability to power everything. In addition to that, it came loaded with N.I.N.A, Stellarium, and most of the drivers I needed. And it's a Windows-based computer, so I can, from the comfort of my office desk, I can log in. I use Stellarium for target selection. I'll get to that in a moment, why. And N.I.N.A controls imaging sessions, and I process with Pix Insight. Stellarium for target selection. Well, this is my view of the night sky that I can see. I have palm trees to the south. I can't hardly visualize anything to the south. I've got a house to the east, and so I can see the northwest sky. Here's the meridian, so I can pick up stuff as they come into view off of my house and wait for them to sink off to the west. So I use a Stellarium to figure out when things are going to be visible and how long they're going to be visible. And the nice thing about the Stellarium, you can tie it in with N.I.N.A, and you can load the target information right from Stellarium into N.I.N.A. My general workflow is I go outside, the green lines are outside, all the rest is inside, but I power up my equipment, and then I connect using a remote desktop from the chair I'm sitting in right now. I start Stellarium to look at targets for the evening. I start N.I.N.A. I load my equipment profile. I'll run an autofocus using the Hocus Focus plugin. And then I polar align. I have to go outside for that because there's a minor adjustments at the mount to get a decent polar alignment. And then I'm back into N.I.N.A. and I load the target information. And I start the advanced sequencer to run the night session. And then I go to bed. Wake up in the morning and download all the images I took, hopefully I have a full night's worth of imaging, but often the location I'm in, the clouds roll in. Like the other night, I started it at 9:30 and got images up all the way up till 10 o'clock at night. That was kind of not the best evening I had, but I enjoy it. Okay, advanced sequencer. I don't know how many people have opened up N.I.N.A. and see the advanced sequencer, but what I do is once the target, and I've been playing with Bode's Galaxy lately when it's visible, and the target gets loaded, and then I start cooling my camera. I typically cool down to 10 degrees. And then I have a wait for set up to start picture taking at astronomical dusk. And N.I.N.A. knows when that is based on my location. So I'm basically waiting until it's pretty dark. Astronomical dusk starts about here yesterday when I made this slide. Then I have N.I.N.A. will slew and center. I'll start my guiding, and I don't want to go through the calibration process because leave my mount out in the backyard and the scope on the mount, so I feel the calibration is pretty tight. Then I'll switch to a luminance filter since right now I'm focusing on mono, and I run an autofocus routine. And that gets me set up for an imaging session. N.I.N.A. has triggers which allow it to do stuff on certain conditions, like if there's a meridian flip needed, N.I.N.A. can go ahead and do the meridian flip. And then also one of the triggers is after every image N.I.N.A. takes, you can set up a center after drift, where if the target has moved off of the center by a certain amount, N.I.N.A. will recenter it for you to keep the target on the image where you want it. And then also set up a trigger for an autofocus. If the HFR increases enough, stars are starting to get out of focus, a little bit big, N.I.N.A. can refocus. And then I set up my loop conditions for the session. And I'm currently set up to loop until a given time. Time I set for 2 o'clock. Why 2 o'clock in the morning? That's when the Bode's Galaxy sinks beneath my western fence. So if I start at 9:30-ish, I can get quite a few hours on target. And then the instructions, it just loops through these instructions, and I've set up take luminous, take R, G, B, and H. I'm not bothering with the sulfur or oxygen for a galaxy. And currently it'll take 15 luminances, and then change filters. And I use a filter offset, so I'm not wasting a whole bunch of time refocusing as the filters change. So it goes to the red, and then takes another 15 shots and goes to green, takes 15 shots, goes to red, takes 15 shots, goes to hydrogen, takes 5 fairly long exposures, and then it goes again. And once 2 o'clock in the morning happens, it drops out of the loop, and I stop guiding, start the warming of the camera, and I send the mount home. And that's pretty much the sequence I set up. Of course, the exposures are different, whether I can shoot color, I can shoot mono, I can shoot, once I start seeing some interesting nebula pop up in my sky, I'll swap over to HSO and run a sequence that covers those 3 filters. So it's basically, for me, once this is set up, it's a launch and go. And I don't have to watch it at all.
Good stuff.
Are you taking comments or?
Yeah, I can.
So I
Sure.
have I have a question and a suggested improvement. If you
Oh,
could
sure.
go back to the other slide. Um, how did you create that horizon? I have
Oh.
never figured out how to do that. And you can loop until astronomical dawn or loop until your target is below a certain amount. I'm
Right.
sure you know that. So I'm just curious why you loop until 2 a.m. Is that because of the neighbors or something?
That's because as I track the image in Stellarium and advance it hour by hour by hour, when it finally disappears out of sight, I say, I'm done.
But
And that for me was 2 o'clock in the morning.
but you know that you can handle it by
I could handle it
altitude.
right inside N.I.N.A.
Yeah, you can handle it by altitude or by astronomical dawn or nautical dawn. There's a whole set of different loopings.
There's all sorts of different ways of doing it. And that's
Yeah, okay. And
one of
then
the interesting parts of
how did you
N.I.N.A
get
is
that
there's
horizon in there?
the horizon. I used a iPhone program called, let's see. It was like a theodolite, and I went outside and just followed the skyline or followed the horizon, up for the house, down, and it took a series of points. And then N.I.N.A can load those in and create a custom horizon
So
with
there's a
those points.
theodolite app on
Yeah.
iPhone.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And also
So can sorry, a quick comment on Horizon is there's a can you hear me?
yes.
There's a plugin called Horizon Creator in N.I.N.A. Basically, it allows you to go incrementing azimuth and altitude. I don't know however you want, and take pictures, and you're gonna figure out when you're blocked, and then it will log the horizon view blockage for you. And then once you go full around, it creates the horizon file for you.
Okay. Does it move the mount 360 degrees?
Yeah, you have to go incremental, take a picture and check. Yes.
Okay.
I think he was asking, does it loop on its own, or do you have to keep moving it
No,
manually?
I think you have to keep it there. Last time I checked, I haven't used it for a while, but I know there's a plugin there.
Okay, thank you.
You'll find out there's a plugin for almost everything. And here are the three main plugins I use: filter offset calculator, hocus focus, and a 3-point polar alignment.
Are you running this on your laptop or are you running it on the little PC that's on your mount?
The N.I.N.A is running on the PC on my mount.
Okay.
And I use remote desktop on Windows to log into it. And I can program it up from there. I can start the session, I can stop the session, and I can download files also after that the session is over with. So it's running, actually N.I.N.A is running on the little computer that's powering and controlling my mount and all of the other equipment I have on there. And I use remote desktop both on my Windows PC and also on an iPad. I take the iPad out with me when I'm doing the polar alignment and fiddling with the knobs to get a decent polar alignment. And then I scurry back inside because I don't want the mosquitoes to eat me. Or I usually have much better seeing conditions in the winter time, so it gets cold out there.
Are you connected by Wi-Fi or by cable?
It's Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a pretty strong Wi-Fi throughout the property. My property is pretty small. It's just, a little yard in western Poway, 1 block in from Rancho Bernardo. If you know Poway, it's real close to the corner of Pomerado and Rancho Bernardo Road.
Sounds good. Jerry, you want to jump in here?
Sure. Let me share screen one here. You cannot start share when.
Yeah, I think I need to unshare.
Yep.
Let me find the Zoom meeting. Unshare right there. Stop share. Sorry there. Okay.
So what I want to talk about briefly before I show the screen. So I'm studying the T Corona Borealis every possible night that I can with the Sloan filter set. The purpose behind that is the data that we're able to crunch with that allows us to look at accretion disk variability, depending upon which filter we're studying in. Normally, that's going to be the U and G, and we'll see to what's called a disk outburst that occurs if we catch that. Emission line strength in the hydrogen bands. Behavior from the donor star, which is a red giant, the small ones orbiting the big one, and we can see pulsations, ellipsoidal variations in the red giant, and this can create what's called a lobe overflow. And so these states can be detected depending upon which filter you're running and what the magnitude looks like at the time that you're running it. And then we can also detect dust, heavier amounts of dust that are being emitted from the stars at times. And generally that's going to be with the Z filter. So each of the filters offers an opportunity to identify behaviors in the red giant and the white dwarf, which is drawing all the material off of it. That being said, the setup in N.I.N.A, share screen. Oh, there we go. Can I do that? Presentation PowerPoint. Great. I don't know if this is going to work or not. Hang on a second. I don't know if I can start the slideshow and make that work. Let's see here.
Go down to the presentation mode at the bottom.
Can you see it? No, it's not showing the right screen.
There you go.
There,
Got it.
I see it.
All right, so you're seeing the one on the right? Let me
Yes.
see.
We're seeing
All
two
right.
windows, one big
Yeah,
one.
you look good, Jared.
All right. Oh, all right.
We're seeing the next slide as well.
Yeah, you know what? I'll just stick with this. It's not, the bigger one is on the right screen, and this is the little one on the left. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. So I have an observatory in my backyard where I do this, and my primary instrument for all of the science is this Celestron 925 Edge running on a Losmandy G11. I have a 533 MMC on it. The Grizz filter set is at the back right there. There's a GSO Crayford focuser. I have a T2 tilter on there to get the stars nice and circular. EF focus servo, 80 millimeter guide scope on the top. 120 mini guider. Attached to it right at the front is a mini PC. And then I have a DIY flat panel I built that I connect through ASCOM and run. So that's the setup in the backyard. I do have another setup out here, but this is for asteroids. And anyway, so before I get started, every month I run a 3-point alignment just to make sure everything is as tight as it can be. Believe it or not, even though it's sitting on tripods, it stays pretty stable if you're not in there bouncing around. I update the targets before I run asteroids, exoplanets, and same thing for the CCBs, although they tend to be fairly static, and there are conditions I set to make sure that they're not below the horizon or above. You'll see in the N.I.N.A script. Here, this is a list of the plugins that I have in N.I.N.A. I have the exoplanets, ground station, NEOCP for near-Earth objects. I have the standard orbitals for asteroids and comets. I run sequencer power-ups because it gives me a whole slew of extra goodies. Like, for instance, these are all the instructions that are available to me in the advanced sequencer. And if you open up just one of these, you'll usually find a whole lot of little detail steps that are available to add in your flow. So I run that. Then when I get started, there's the startup and global triggers. Let me see. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. Okay, so the first thing I run is a thing called failures to pushover. I run a little thing called pushover, and it will send an alarm and a message to my cell phone. Okay, so that's a global trigger. So if I have something happening throughout the imaging set, then I get a siren sound, and it makes me go and take a look and see what's going on. I unpark the scope. I cool the camera. I have some trigger conditions. I have autofocus set after a temperature change of 2C. I have the DIY meridian flip trigger is set. It has the target in it. It's already calculated the time of the transit and sets conditions, pause before meridian, blah, 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 blah. Okay, then after the meridian flip, I restore guiding. 2 more triggers for HFR increase, so half flux radius increase. And then every time I do a filter change, I go ahead and automatically do a autofocus. So that's slide 1. Once I get, those are the elements at the top, the global triggers and startup conditions. Then the next step is the target itself. And I agree with using Stellarium. I don't think that the catalog that comes with built into N.I.N.A for sky selection is very good. And I like to add a lot of targets that aren't in that catalog. And when I do, you can pull it straight in if you've identified it over in Stellarium first. So I love that connectivity. It makes the process of adding target data much less tedious. After that, we get into exposure info, and I will immediately switch the filter to my first filter just to save time. We'll do a slew and center on the target. We'll run an autofocus, and then I start guiding. And I always force calibration on the first step. I know a lot of people don't, and they like that, and it's fine. I've just found that I've had better accuracy by forcing the calibration. It has more to do with seeing conditions. I'm down at 47 feet in a farmland valley, and my seeing never gets really great. So I've found that by forcing calibration each night with seeing, I get a better outcome.
I've got a quick question, if you don't mind, about calibration.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't do it every time because I've got really limited sky. And if I rotate it to the south to do a calibration, I've got to shoot between 2 palm trees. And I'm not sure how to automate that.
Well, typically what I'll do, especially, one of the things you run into when you're shooting nebula or you're shooting some sort of a globular cluster or something like that. What I'll do is I will first find a target star at about 10th magnitude. I will go to that point, force a calibration on it, run my autofocus on it, and then move to the target that I'm really interested in. No auto guide, no autofocus, let it run. So that's the trick that I've been using to get around any kind of issues of position. I'm not sure if that would help you or not.
Yeah, that probably does, because I can find stars in my northwest sky.
Yeah. And
just don't do it too far away from your target. That's the key.
Yeah, just close by.
Okay. I've always thought that the calibration, you had to be pointing the
If
southward.
you want to reuse it across the sky, you need to be at the intersection of the meridian and the celestial equator for best results. But there's absolutely no reason not to do what Jerry does. It's effectively the same thing. It's just you want to reuse it. I run for weeks on end with my peer-mounted observatory scopes. Never do one. Every 3 or 4 months, I'll do one. It seems to make no difference. But the way Jerry's doing it is fundamentally the same thing at the end of the day.
And it's primarily in my environment more because my seeing conditions are terrible most of the time. So I have better luck if I calibrate every night. I could go, a couple of months without doing it, but I've found that seeing really affects the calibration.
Jerry, could I ask you a question? Why do you use the DIY meridian flip instead of the standard meridian flip trigger that I use? I mean, what's the
I watched this guy who uses a bunch of advanced sequence things, and he has shown a preference towards it. So I tested it over the other meridian flip, and I found
sure it works.
It works better.
In what sense?
Well, I had
Go ahead.
When I tried the original, the meridian flip that comes with N.I.N.A, it failed for me several times, and I think it was it, not me. And so I gave up and just did. I have a way to do it just without using any special N.I.N.A tools.
Yeah, since I moved over to DIY, I haven't had any failures. When I was on the original N.I.N.A tool, sometimes it would just forget where it was, and it'd be 15, 17 minutes past the meridian, and it would hit the stops and ruin my night.
I've never had that happen. Isn't that interesting? I wonder what the variable is.
I don't know. There are things that I spend a lot of time trying to noodle, and there's other stuff that if I can solve it quickly with a change of tasking. I just do that and not try to get involved in it.
Yeah, I
'cause-
just wondered why the DIY was better, but I'll have to do some research.
I wouldn't say it's better. It just this worked better for me. How about that?
Okay.
What,
Me too.
what works for me is I start shooting after the image crosses the meridian
That
Because-
works real well.
because I have a very limited pre-meridian viewpoints.
Well, I think you'll see why I'm in that mode here when you look at the number of images and the amount of time that's dedicated to it. So anyway, now I get here and I change my failures to pushover trigger from the global one to a new sound called incoming so that I know I'm actually in the mode of shooting. So that just gives me a different signal and I know what I'm working on at this point. So I tend to wait for time, astronomical dusk, and I also wait for altitude for these to be 40.
Wow.
And once that gets going, then it's the smart exposures. I bend 2 by 2, trying to get more detail out of it. It's a 10th magnitude star. Sometimes it gets up to 9th, sometimes it's down to 11th. It just depends on where it's at in its cycle and where it is in its orbit around the red giant. And so I run the 120 30-second SGs, SRs, and SIs. And now I don't run the Z filter right now because I found that the 533 is not sensitive enough in that band. And even if I expose for a very long time, it's just not worth it. So I'm running the GRI, and that's good enough for these observations. What else? That's about it. My gains 101, I offset at 5. Now here's the thing. When you're doing this kind of stuff, you look at the first image that comes down in Astro Image J. You pop it up, you process it briefly, and then you take a look at what the star's ADU count is. And if your ADU is about 20% of saturation, then you're at the right spot for your observation. The beautiful thing about N.I.N.A is if I figure out that for that exposure, when I look after the first one, that my ADU is high, I can step in here, change the time, and on the very next image, it will start shooting that new time. And I can change the count to offset so that I can have more images if I'm doing less time, or less images if I'm doing more time. But the trick is to definitely look at the image when it first comes down. I keep AIJ on the computer out there on the telescope, and I check the image right away. Of course, with TCRB, because it varies in magnitude on a regular basis, usually on a weekly basis, you'll see this shift in magnitude. You definitely need to step in and check it at the beginning of the run. So,
Jerry, if other people wanted to look at TCRB, what would be the smallest practical telescope they could use? Do you have any comment on that?
Oh, sure. You can do studies with it with a refractor. The question is, will you be able to gather data about the magnitude change? And I dare say you can. It's worth trying. I did it on my ASCAR for a while, and I did see magnitude variations, but they're not very subtle. If you're talking about exoplanets, that's millimag. Give up. You have to use, a long focal length.
Right. I was just thinking specifically about some things that people could do with more modest equipment.
You could definitely do TCRB, and you can definitely do asteroids down to 16th magnitude. On the longer focal length, you can get down to 19th magnitude. So now, when you get down to 18th to 19th magnitude, you're talking about, for asteroids, you're talking about being able to submit on very small asteroids that are being detected as NEOs at CNEOS, or potentially hazardous asteroids as well. So reporting can be done even with a refractor at that level. But like I said, about 16th magnitude is where you tap out on asteroids with the ASCAR. And then with this guy, I can get down to about 18th magnitude. And then with my scope out at Great Basin Observatory, we're able to get down to 19.5. Gives you some idea. It's all about the brightness of the object. And I think TCRB is a worthy target for refractors. I would give it a go for what it's worth. But you gotta be into Astro Image J or ASTAP, one of the two.
Jerry, which ASCAR do you have?
I have that new one with the two heads, the 80 and the 60.
Okay.
That 5. It gives you a nice range from like 125 to 600, depending upon what the reducer or flattener or device you put on the eyepiece end, and up at the head, you can change it from an 80 to a 60. So it's cheap. It was fun. For the cost of one refractor, I got a bunch. I don't think it's better than a single dedicated refractor that has better, color fringing. I get a tiny bit of color fringing with it, but I'm not doing pretty pictures so often. And when I do, nobody notices that I show it to. They're all high school students or college students, and they just look at the colors and go, "Cool." I wouldn't show it to you guys. You go, "That's trash." So let's see here. Finally, at the end of the night, when everything's done, I stop guiding. I send a message to myself that things have shut down, warm the camera, and then I have the ability to run an external script, which is, I think, part of the power up tool. And if you can write JSON, you can get a lot done. So, and the beauty of, and I really love this about N.I.N.A, and I'll stop sharing now. It's entirely JSON based, which is not really complex. You look at it, you go, "Oh my God, there's all kinds of stuff in here." But when you start really looking at it, it's just a flat file of instructions. And the beauty of building these things first in the advanced sequencer and then only opening up the JSON file is you know what you did when you built it. And now you can actually directly manipulate the instructions to gain additional advantages with that. I will say this too. Stefan Berg, the developer, was hired last year by Planewave, who is merged with a company called Observational Space. They are building a cloud-based control system for the Planewave telescope line. And Stefan Berg's base code for N.I.N.A is the platform that they're going to be putting into the cloud. The promise is that down the road, they're going to be able to service every telescope that wants to be cloud connected and running their kernel. You'll download their kernel onto your platform, and then you'll control it from the cloud interface. That's pretty cool. And then that gives you unlimited amounts of storage. Plus, you can actually, on nights when you're not doing anything, sell some of your sky time to them, because they like to look at satellites. That's their whole business, is military tracking of satellites and commercial satellite tracking. So anyway, that's my show. Thank you very much for letting me present.
Well, thank you, Jerry. I learned a few things.
Yeah,
Scott, you want to jump? Scott, you jump in here?
I'm sorry, I have a quick question. Jerry, appreciate it. My name is Jerry. And my question is, what I'm seeing is the advanced user or planner, or whatever we call that. I don't use that. That's one component of N.I.N.A that I just for various reasons. But my question would be, are you finding that you're having to constantly maintain that or update that or tweak it over time? Like for example, the planner that you've in place now, when was the last time that you went and had to go and touch it and tweak it and modify it?
Last June.
Okay, so they're pretty stable. Once you said
The trick is you have to make sure that when you're running these things, like for asteroids, every time I load up previous asteroid sessions and I know it's going to be in cycle again, whenever I do that, there's a plugin, and it will go out to the Minor Planet Center and it will update the positioning for tonight. Okay? Because it's moved since the last time I put it in there. The RA deck changes constantly. This saves you a huge amount of pain of having to go and run an ephemeris at the planetary systems, right? You can it's just directly connects to the MPC. It pulls in the current RAN deck. You pick the time you want to start it. It loads it, and boom, you're in business. So when it comes to targets that are variable, like exoplanets,
Mhm.
I have every time I run an exoplanet, all right, so I'm using for that, I'll use the target scheduler plugin. I'll pick the exoplanet and I will bracket it with start times, a different trip, because you can maintain in the target scheduler a standardized length of exposures, all the basic information you need, and then add a target to it very quickly. And once you've added the target, you call it from a simpler advanced scheduler script and plug
Okay.
it in. And it just makes doing exoplanets, 5 minutes and you're ready to go.
Okay, so it's very, so what I'm hearing is it's very stable. Once you set it up, you're not constantly tweaking it or babysitting it. Now, apply that to somebody that basically tears their equipment down and runs it out to TDS or out to Borrego and constantly, relocating, going to dark sites. Do you think that still applies, would still apply?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I love about that, because I do drag equipment around sometimes. My favorite thing is the 3-point alignment plugin. You can take a telescope set up anywhere, throw it out in the field, turn on N.I.N.A and do a 3-point alignment, and in 10 minutes, you're polar aligned and you're accurate. I mean, it's fantastic.
Okay, so much faster than All-Star Polar Alignment.
Yes,
Uh,
and you can do it before astronomical dusk.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
As long as your scope picks up stars.
Jerry, I wouldn't be able to answer your question about the other method you mentioned. It may be just as good. I've never used it.
Well, it's just their legacy planner, right? And that's what I use, but that's just because my experience with the scripts, they're great, but the maintenance around that stuff historically.
Yeah, it used to be a lot more painful.
Yeah, but if it's pretty stable and, I would, yeah, I can certainly see the value in investing into it once and then having a stable running plan and not having to do it every time.
The real key is having a lot of plans month by month that you maintain over the years. And when you get into that particular month, you can call that plan back up and go right to work.
Okay. Yep, makes sense. Thanks.
Scott, what you want to show us tonight?
My turn?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can share here. You guys see a slide with some stuff on it?
Mhm.
It's not a slide, it's just a PowerPoint. I'm sorry, a Word document. Okay, so let's see, maybe I should explain what I'm up to. This is just about pretty pictures in N.I.N.A and what my process is, and probably be a little quicker than Jerry's. So I do use N.I.N.A all the time when doing pretty pictures. I also work with Pat Boyce and on his scopes, and we've been doing a lot of speckle lately through N.I.N.A, and we historically did exoplanets more with AIJ than N.I.N.A. We didn't really do exoplanets with N.I.N.A, but we did we're still doing a lot of speckle. And in fact, there's a project right now going on. There's maybe a dozen or so of us that are going up to Mount Wilson and actually using the 100-inch and the 60-inch to do speckle. And in the 100-inch, it's real high quality science data that's coming out.
That's wild.
Yeah, and so we're using N.I.N.A in those applications as well. Yeah, the Wilson telescopes for years have just been sidelined and used for outreach events,
Yeah.
But what we're attempting to do with this group is actually do science with the 100-inch and quality science too, not just kind of sloppy science. So at any rate, I ran the AISIG group a few years ago and got distracted and got off on other things, but I kept taking pretty pictures because it's fun. And so that's what this is about. And first I was going to go through my process. And then there's a particular N.I.N.A script that I wanted to show you that I used over the last weekend, which worked pretty well. So anyway, my equipment is at Ross Salinger's his observatory at TDS. And Ross is kind enough to, first of all, let me be there, and then to open the lid when the weather's good and let me take pictures as much as I want. And we installed this system, this equipment in there. It's been about, I don't know, less than a year, hasn't it, Ross? I forget when we did it.
Yeah, you had that RC for about 18 months, and now you got this one. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
At least a year. Yeah.
I got kind of tired of the RC because the field is narrow. There's a lot of pictures you can take with it, but if you open up the field with a refractor, then it's kind of a different ball game. The pictures are quite different. So anyway, let me just go through the equipment that I've got that I'm using and the process I use to take pictures, and then we'll look at a N.I.N.A script and how that this particular script worked well over the weekend. So I've got the equipment's a little aged. It's a CEM 60 mount. The camera is pretty new. It's an ASCAR 400 millimeter f6, f5.6. It's a real nice camera. It has the off-axis guide chip, you know, but there's a little problem in my system with that because the filter wheel is 1 1/4 inches, and even with the ASCAR chip itself, I'm sorry, with the ZWO chip itself, there's a tiny bit of vignetting in the corner of the field, which doesn't usually impact the pretty pictures. But the off-axis chip for guiding is basically out of the field, and I spent the money to get it, but it's useless to me because I'd have to go back and put a 2-inch filter wheel in and 2-inch filters, and I just didn't want to do that. And so, at any rate, the guiding is not through the primary aperture. It's a separate aperture with just a small Starshoot auto guider and PHD. So that's basically what the equipment is. And it's some of it's a little old, but it's pretty simple and easy to work with. Ross and I put it together one evening, and you know, usually it's up at TDS, so you got to drive up there, and usually it takes 2 or 3 tries before you get it working, and we had it working in the first try, which I was really surprised at that. So anyway, here's my basic process of getting pictures. First, you have to pick a target, and there's a book by Gary M. It's I think the title is something like 750 best DSO objects in the North. And the book's been out not too long. I just noticed it a month or so ago, and I got a copy, and it is so handy because I mean there's a lot of things out there to image, and you can just and it's by date, and it has all the information you need to kind of select the image that you're interested in. And then, of course, you have to have some quantitative information about it. So I use SkyX to get the RA index and the times when it's visible and when the transit is. So that's how I pick targets. And that book I highly recommend the book. You should just get one because it's got 750 opportunities to image DSOs. So then the next thing, now I've got a target, so the next thing is to run N.I.N.A and take the pictures. And I'll let me go through this first, and then I'll show you how that goes. So assuming I have the pictures, then of course everybody uses PixInsight, including me. And the first thing I do is the weighted batch pre-processing script. And you just basically, you throw your image, you might toss out the really bad ones, but the batch pre-processing will eliminate bad images and do a wonderful job of calibration, alignment, stacking, and generating your masters. And sometimes it gets a little bit off track and doesn't do it right. I've had that experience and had to go back to more primitive ways to do the pre-processing, but weighted batch pre-processing, and that's a built-in function in PixInsight, and it's quite effective. It's just an easy way to go from your raw images that you collected to masters that you can further process. So once you do that, you've got a set of masters in whatever colors you're using. I do, because I'm looking at emission nebulae most of the time, I'm usually doing a narrowband. So there's a plug-in to N.I.N.A, to PixInsight, I'm sorry, by RC Astro. In fact, there's several plugins. The first one is Noise Exterminator, and that basically just using AI. They have different AI versions which have different qualities for getting rid of noise in your images. So I run the Noise Exterminator, then Blur Exterminator, which sharpens up the images. And then before combining them, I stretch them with the histogram transformation. Then I just do a simple LRGB combination, and now you've got a basic color template to work with. And the last thing when you're working first in PixInsight is you do star exterminator and separate the background from the stars and process them separately. And I found, I'm old school kind of guy. I found it's very efficient to do that in Photoshop. So I take the background without stars and the stars without background, and I process those to my liking in Photoshop. And then I bring things back together and stick the stars back in the background images. And so that's basically my flow, the way I'm currently doing it, pretty much. Of course, there can be a lot of variations on this, but that's generally on a good day, that's how it all goes. So let's see. So here's a N.I.N.A script, which I put together. This is just a screen grab on it. I'd show you I can go to the actual machine at Ross's.
Todd, you
yeah.
have to stop sharing this particular application if you've got something else up.
I have to stop share the first one.
Yeah, and they'll share the other thing you were showing there.
Oh, so you're not seeing what I'm seeing now, huh? You're not seeing the N.I.N.A window.
No.
In you.
Okay, now let me. Yeah, the Zoom thing has changed. It doesn't let you just share your screen anymore. It seems, now do you see it?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
So this is just a screen grab of the advanced sequencer in N.I.N.A. And this is what I set up for last weekend, basically. And I would go to Ross's observatory and directly show you show you N.I.N.A in place. And of course, it's run that's a remote desktop from my desktop to a little small computer that's by my scope, and that small computer controls everything on the telescope. But at any rate, I set this up to do M8, what's the name of it?
The glob?
The Lagoon Nebula,
Lagoon.
right? So, and of course, this time of year, first of all, it's to the south. The deck is about -24 or something like that. It's quite a ways south, so it doesn't come up and stay above 30 degrees very long. And this time of year, it was above 30 degrees for about 3 hours each night. And it started a little bit out, it started being high enough to picture about 1 in the morning. So in the script, I waited till 1 in the morning and just let it sit there. And when we got to 1 in the morning, I unparked the scope, cooled the camera, and slewed and centered to the location of the target. And then I waited a little bit longer. I started a little bit early so I could cool the camera, but waited a little bit longer until the thing was above 30 degrees. And then started guarding and switched. The 5, 6, and 7 filters are my narrowband filters. They're hydrogen alpha, sulfur, and oxygen. So I just basically took, in the case of hydrogen alpha, took 3 images, 2 in sulfur and 2 in oxygen. And that's the number of images that you can fit in before the meridian flip. You have to kind of figure out how much time there is between when the target gets above 30 degrees and when the meridian flip happens. And so you take those pictures, and then when you're done with them, you basically park the scope and wait for the meridian flip to be history. That is to say, you wait for it to wait a few minutes until it's passed, and then you unpark the scope and slew and center, start guiding, switch filters, and take pictures until it goes back down to 30 degrees, which in this case lasted till about 4 in the morning. And you know, there is in N.I.N.A, there's an automated meridian flip process, which I had bad experience with. Didn't work very well for me, and so I just figured, well, I'll just do it myself. And so that's how that's how I've done this. And of course, every target, there's variations on when you take the pictures, how you do it. There's 1,000 different ways to write this kind of script. And this script itself is quite straightforward and simple. It's not rocket science, you know, it's very easy to figure out. There's a hell of a lot of instructions in N.I.N.A. You see the instructions over here on the right. But you need to kind of know what you want to do, and it's not a hard process to select the instructions and put them together into a script, which you can, of course, then save and run anytime you want.
Scott, I've got a couple of observations, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I was a little curious about how do you remember filter 5, 6, and 7? I've changed the name of my filters in N.I.N.A, so well, I know it's H, S, and O.
Yeah, I know. I guess I'm just lazy, and I knew the numbers. Okay. And I haven't spent as much time configuring the hardware and N.I.N.A. Well, the hardware in N.I.N.A. Of course, this is just the script, and before you get to the point where you can use a script, you've got to go through the process of installing a hardware, making sure it's all properly installed with all the settings and stuff. And that's a project in itself. That to use N.I.N.A, you got to learn that first. And it's not a trivial task. It takes a while to do that. But N.I.N.A is extremely logical and well constructed. And it's worth the time to learn how to do that. And so, but I'm a little lazy, and so I could have given my filters names, but I know what the numbers mean.
You could if you wanted to.
Yeah, right, exactly.
The other observation is on the wait for time. There's a meridian option on wait for time.
Yeah. Well, there's several wait for options, and this just happens to be the one I used.
Okay.
You certainly use the other ones, and when you're writing a script, you figure out which one you think is appropriate to use, and you pick that one and just drag it over there, and it goes right into place.
Well, Scott, I have to tell you, I use the same one every single time, and it's wait for altitude is 30 on my target. And that the nice thing about that is it doesn't matter what the target is for that night. I don't have to play with it. I don't have to think about the time or look at it.
You don't have to worry about the times.
Exactly.
Yeah, but if you let's say you get to one where wait for altitude is 30, that would be not a problem at all. If you
but you can change it to 20 or 25 or whatever. It's just a convenient way of not having to bother to figure out what time it is. I'm time challenged. So
it's just a slightly different way of doing it, and it's probably easier and a better way to do it.
It's vastly superior, vastly superior.
Okay, well, I did it the dumb way. Let me just put it that way.
All right, well, we'll talk later.
Yeah, okay.
So for the meridian flip, the plugin will it automatically pause as you get close to the meridian? So
it waits until the scope gets up to the meridian, and then stops whatever's going on, and goes through the whole process of doing the flip. It's all automated, and it shows the steps as that happens, as it go across the screen. Now, the problem I had with it was it didn't seem to reacquire the target reliably after the flip. And so on multiplications, and I never figured out what the cause was. It could be me, not N.I.N.A, but I didn't figure it out. So I just decided, well, I'll just do it myself. And the instruction sets have so much flexibility. You can be quite creative about the way you put together your collection. So
one thing about the meridian flip is that if it's approaching the meridian and it's within the boundaries that you set for it, if it's still imaging, it will finish the image before it does the flip. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, well, and if you're worried about the clearances when you get up close to the meridian, pieces bumping into your mount, then you don't want to let it go too far past the meridian before the flip.
Yeah.
So now I guess for me I was going to just show you a picture or two. But I've got to redo the flip, I guess. Well, here's one. Let me see if I can. Share. Yeah. So this is the Lagoon Nebula that I got over the weekend. And, it isn't, when you have a narrowband scope, the Lagoon Nebula is just this central part, but you get some very interesting larger patterns when you have a bigger field of view.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I did it 2 nights and just set up the script and went to bed and got the images in the morning. There was no hiccups in the script. I actually, the first night was 3 hours and the second night was another 3 hours. And I was just curious as to how much for a target like this, certainly varies from one target to another, but I was quite curious as to how much you were gaining with the extra 3 hours, you know. So I processed the whole 6 hours, and that's what this is. And I also processed just the 3 hours to see, and then compared them. And there, you can find, you can see a difference. I compared them after the noise exterminator and the blur exterminator, and you can see the difference, but it's quite subtle and not. I mean, the pictures are almost identical. You have to look at them very carefully to see any difference between the results you get in 3 hours versus 6, which was interesting to me because it kind of tells you, well, you know, yeah, you can do with this kind of target, and it's going to be different for different targets, obviously. But with this kind of target, you might you might not need to do 12, 24 hours of exposure. And you just don't gain much from it. So let me show you one other one. I'll just show you the jellyfish. I like the jellyfish. You see, does that come across?
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, it's the process is, you know, using PixInsight used to be you had to learn a lot of tricks to make things work in PixInsight, but with some of these plugins and tools that they're there now, it's really not hard to do. So it's a lot of fun. And when you with this wider field, there are a lot more picture options, I guess, that you can select from. But they're all these colorful emission nebula. It's different kind of photography.
All right.
So that's about what I got.
All right. Izu, you want to jump in here?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Can you hear me? Let me see if I can share my screen. I also see if I got it right. Share my screen. You guys see it?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
So really quick, I have my equipment ongoing, and this is target scheduler is in action. I think someone mentioned you want to see this, but actually there's not much to see. But I'll circle back on my N.I.N.A flow. But later on we can check on the progress. I only have 2 slides. I can make it a little bit quick. The slides is focused on imaging with N.I.N.A. So half of the slide deck is about self-introduction. I'll make this section quicker. But because I'm not too active with the group, although I've been in the hobby for quite a few years, I just want to at least say hi and introduce myself. My name is Yizhou Zhang. I've been doing this imaging for quite a lot of times, over 10 years maybe, and I've been serious into this hobby for at least 5-6 years. My main equipment, I have 2 remote setups, one in New Mexico, but this one has been recently descoped. This is with an AP1100 mount with 2 Takahashi scopes on top of that. I think it's worth noting that we do use N.I.N.A to operate 2 scopes, the dual scope setup together and synchronized. I didn't plan too much details here, but if there's an interest, we can expand maybe in another opportunity. And I also have another single scope setup in West Texas, a private observatory with 10-micron mount and TEC 140 refractor. I'm a refractor guy. And backyard, I'm playing with the ASA DDM60 mount, the direct drive, which is pretty cool drive and pretty cool mount. And I do that with various scope and cameras at home. Recently and very lately, all of this stuff are controlled by N.I.N.A. As people mentioned, open source, easy to get. very flexible, very approachable. I think it's a great, it's an awesome program. I have been uploading my image to Astro Beam. If any of you guys are familiar with that platform, I have been inactive for the past 2 years-ish with different focus in the life and whatnot. But again, this show the evidence that I have been somewhat deep in the hole at some point. So
how many pictures of the day do you have?
I don't remember. Yeah.
I've been following you on Astrobin for quite a bit, and the images you do are just phenomenal.
Thanks. Yeah, not active enough, but I'm trying to get back to the hobby.
Looks like an icon for Voyager. Are you also running Voyager?
Yeah, so I want to, because this is a N.I.N.A session, I want to just mention a little bit about my progress on the software side. I guess these are the to me, these are the three like main players in the game that's somewhat affordable and accessible. So I start with SGP. I think most of you guys probably hear about this, know about this. I think it started from maybe 2014-ish. At that time, this is the only affordable $99 get you the license. That's the kind of the main player that allows like full automation over time. I start with this in about 2019, 2020. I hook up with Leonardo, who is the author of Voyager. And the Voyager definitely offers some pretty cool features back then. And I've been deep in Voyager. I've been deep relying on Voyager for my automation, for my remote setup. And I have 2 sessions talking about how do we use Voyager and what the features I like on the Astro Imaging channel. I don't know if some of you guys follow the AIC. I think it's again a great platform. I have 2 talks on that. In about the same time is when the N.I.N.A start up. I think it started from 1.0, which is the fundamental basic sequencing. And then it's been in kind of I'm monitoring the development of the N.I.N.A. And with N.I.N.A 2.0 and some plugins introduced and available of the advanced sequencer, I start to look at N.I.N.A a little bit more seriously. And about maybe 2 years ago, N.I.N.A 3.0, I forgot the exact time, but 3.0, more plugins, and specifically the target scheduler plugin shows up. And this, to me, is a very, very powerful engine. And I'm going to talk a little bit how I rely on that for my imaging session, and I can show a little bit demo with my remote PC. But basically, in the past year or maybe 18 months, I switched from Voyager to N.I.N.A and have been very heavily using N.I.N.A for target scheduling and dual scope syncing and all the controllings. So this is kind of my experience with astrophotography automation software and how I end up with N.I.N.A recently. I will just very quickly show my flow, how I rely on advanced sequencing, and how some of my mostly used plugins. And I do want to switch to my remote PC screen just to quickly show the steps of this in a little bit more details. But I think you guys are, so before I go into this, I think one question I think Jerry has is that how stable this thing is. And since I've been using Target Scheduler and I matured my scripts with Target Scheduler, I haven't touched a thing for over 1 year. Like it's literally one button start up, and I don't even look at this thing. I go back and next morning and get some data. And right now with some more plugins, I start a script from phone. I don't even log in onto the remote PC anymore. I only do that for today for a demo. So a lot of plugins make this software very powerful and very fun to use. Honestly, some of them may not be like super useful for everybody, but I just want to explore the plugins, and I can show a little bit examples later, like how cool this thing is. But basically, this is where I am. But I think mostly the set workflow is more or less the same for everyone. For me, I'm maybe a little bit more automated. The starting from the very top to the very bottom, everything is automated in N.I.N.A advanced sequencing. I power up by the by the connector and via the Pegasus power box automation, and I connect to the devices via connector plugin. I wait for the conditions when it's ready to go, and then the system will check if it's safe, and then if it's safe, it do its initialization activities, nothing fancy. I also rely on Hocus Focus for the initial autofocusing as well as the autofocusing during the imaging, and also send myself some message via ground station and push over to tell me where I am in the sequence. And then into the imaging side, I think this is worth highlighting a little bit. Like traditionally, as some of you guys showed, you plan your target one, you plan the time to switch target one, and you do your imaging. You tell N.I.N.A how many images you want to collect in what sequences, in what loop, and in what loop conditions, and then at the right timing you switch to target 2, and then you do the same. You switch to target 3, and then blah 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 over the night, and then over different days you probably want to change target 1 and target 2. You probably want the different targets or different conditions or different number of exposures per night. But all of this now turns into one row in my advanced sequencing, one target scheduler, and later I can show you what that means. And I think it's very stable, and you don't have to change the time you jump out of the loop or enter in the next target. You don't have to worry how many images you want to collect, because you just preset that in the target scheduler engine and it fulfills it, and then you forget about that.
Are all of your targets in the scheduler fixed RA decks? In other words, you're always pointing to the same thing, or do you work with any targets which their RA decks change, such as asteroid or?
Yeah, I don't have. Oh, I'm a DSO guy. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't have
Okay.
a dynamic target. That's a good point. I don't know how to handle that. You probably, yeah.
I'm just curious because I haven't found. I'm looking for fixed points or even something that would find opposition and then schedule for opposition.
Yeah, I don't have experience on that. Yes.
Okay.
So there's some new ones such as Star Messenger, which sends you the. I can these guys are like monitoring ones, which obviously not needed, but I find it pretty useful, and I can show you examples later just to show what they are. And then there's unsafe handling and shutdown, nothing fancy. This is the workflow. I plan to next switch to some plugins and switch to my ongoing session just to show you the workflow in action. But I can pause if there's any questions or anything here.
You know, I just want to touch on the stability stuff. So my experience, or my struggles, I should say, with N.I.N.A has been around focusing, right? So I use the Celestron focuser that comes with. I also have a 9.25 Edge HT, and if I'm not sitting there just watching it, sometimes it works great. Sometimes it just goes off sideways, and it's like I don't know what's going. So to programmatically handle that is why I've kind of steered away from this, because I wasn't. But I honestly, I've never really. Maybe early on I tried that Hocus Focus, and then I went away from it. It's been out a few years now, so I don't know if that's just more proficient at focusing. Go ahead,
Jerry.
Well, let me just say that I certainly agree with your comments about the focuser in N.I.N.A. It sometimes works okay, and you can have a hell of a lot of trouble making it play right.
I guess I would file a minority report here. I think what you need to do is there was a really good presentation by George Helios on the Astro Imaging channel about how to optimize Hocus Focus, and he talks quite a bit about how to optimize it for long focal lengths and for scopes that have obstructions. And that proved to be a real winner for me because I was struggling with my Edge 11. And I just 90% of the time was fine. But once I watched that, I
Okay.
changed two things in Hocus Pocus, and now it's 100% focus every night. So that's just
Okay.
my advice. There
Yeah.
is help for you out there.
All right, I appreciate
Okay.
that. Go ahead.
So I will first want to show one thing that maybe not touched upon by other people yet, is that I saw that most of us, the presenters today, are on in the advanced sequencer, which is very powerful. It is one of the reasons I started looking to N.I.N.A and switch to N.I.N.A. But I also want to point out that to those of you guys who are maybe just started on this astrophotography automation journey, you can start with like a basic sequence where you only load in one target. Actually, you can pile in multiple targets, but just focus on one target and some basic actions like slew to it and trigger one autofocus and populate some images. Even just this basic sequence, I think is great help. I still remember when I started this, I live in Wisconsin and I get out in like -30 in the snow pile, and I had to knee down and do my stuff there. And but later on, with the initial SGP basic sequencing, just something like this buys me quite a lot of sleep and stay warm. So, and I think this is also fun and very useful to start with. So N.I.N.A is not only about advanced sequencing and full automation, but it's a good starting point to get your hands into some automated data collection. I want to quickly show my workflow a little bit in detail here, and then switch to some plugin introductions. This is kind of a repeat of my slides previously, but the way I set up is that at the start of night, I wait for the dusk, and then I connect all the modules and power on the mount, wait for the time the mount is powered on, connect it to the switch to the Pegasus box, turn on different channels of that. So I power the camera, the focuser and whatnot. And then I wait a little bit more, and then I connect all the equipment and I know that it will be okay that everything is connected, and then I cool. Then I wait for the proper astronomical time to image. And then I start the system. Let me know if I'm moving too fast and cannot follow, but I'm pointing to the sequence tab here just to show what are the steps. When the time is right, I uncover, unpark, do my initial autofocus, and then I go into this imaging block. As I point out, the beauty of this is that inside this, there's just one line, run the target scheduler. And what target scheduler does is it automatically pick the most suitable target in my all the database I put in. I pre-tell the target scheduler what are the targets I want to image, and how many pictures I wanted to take. My target scheduler search engine is arranged in this way that I have 4 groups: LRGB, hydrogen alpha, and sulfur, all 3, and some short exposure just to get RGB stars for the narrowband image I'm doing. And then if I expand this, then I have different targets in here where I say how many image I desired. And then, as you can see, the target scheduler actually takes more than what's designed image, and there's a ranking system to tell out of the 55 image of luminance channel I got, only 40 is accepted due to different criteria, and you can set the criteria different ways somewhere. And then it will just let it flow, and it will just pick all the pictures for me and do this. All you have to do, what you have to do is manage this database. You have to tell what target you want, how many images you need. That's pretty much it. And then you can go to the scheduler preview. You can pick any day, I don't know, any of the day, and you can run, and it will tell you what image the scheduler thinks is suitable to be picked at that time, and starting one and end one. And on that date, your target scheduler will just basically follow this searching and arrange your imaging session. So I think target scheduler is very useful. Again, if I go back to my imaging channel, sorry, it's a little bit slow. But if I go back to here, in the imaging block, I only have one line. So it's just target scheduler container, and it does the job. So as you can see right now, target scheduler actually finished one narrowband imaging of M86, and now it's switching to a different target because because the astronomical dusk already start. Astronomical night already start, and I'm eligible to start doing LRGB. I don't need to do hydrogen alpha. So target scheduler knows that and switch to the next LRGB targets. And it's doing the slewing and centering and rotating and whatnot, and it will continue exposure. So it's pretty cool. Any questions on target scheduler? I move too fast, or I plan to show a little bit other peripheral plugins.
Your system has a rotator on it?
Yes.
Okay.
Very cool. I have a general question, and this is kind of might be relevant to the advanced scheduler or not. But so if I look at your statistics there, right? One of my pain points with N.I.N.A is the useful or lack of use of that histogram there. I do like the oops, back on your image screen. Yeah, right there. So next in the upper towards right, you've got this, your histogram there. So this is all great as far as like planning about acquisition, but what about how are folks using, and this is kind of a question to the audience here, how are folks using N.I.N.A for determining the proper exposure of said target, right? So like I will use the histogram, and I'll use frankly the min and max to see what stuff's falling on or off that sensor. But if there's any clever ways that people are using N.I.N.A to determine the proper exposure, the technical proper exposure, I guess, that would be interesting to know.
I use SkyTools 4, but that's not part of N.I.N.A. But that if you get familiar with the software, it will tell you based on the signal quality what and the parameters, your scope and the sky and weather conditions, what kind of exposures that you need to take.
Okay.
So I would do that separately than the whole imaging process, but I don't use N.I.N.A anyway.
Gotcha.
But SkyTools 4 is good for that. I
personally don't change exposure parameter at all based on targets. The modern CMOS camera is, in my opinion, is just powerful enough that you can do stretch, and you can stretch to your taste in post processing. So it's not a problem to me. I have been using the same exposure pattern for every LRGB.
That's interesting. So you're determining that outside of the sequencer. There's nothing in your sequencer.
Correct.
Let's figure out what the proper exposure is. Okay.
No, I never change. I personally never change exposure. So my exposure is preset based on the channel and filter I'm going to do. If I'm doing luminance, I'm always doing 600 10-minute exposure being one, and at this gain. If I'm doing hydrogen alpha, I'm always doing 20-minute at this gain. I never change that. Gotcha. I will certainly not overexposure, and I can do my stretch later to however I want.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
This is kind of the main thing I want to show a little bit is that if you ever want to keep an eye on your progress, I don't know if anyone used this, but this is the web session to the N.I.N.A, and this page is actually on my home computer. I'm now linking to the my N.I.N.A session in the West Texas, and you can see all the images taken over the time. There's a preview and there's some statistics of HFR and number of stars and whatnot. You can do this on your phone just to see what is the progress of the imaging. If you prefer to lie in bed instead of sitting in front of the computer to check on this, I find it pretty useful. It tells you when the N.I.N.A starts, when the N.I.N.A ends, if there's an arrow, and when I have meridian flip. Interesting, I don't even have that. When I have autofocus, blah 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 blah.
Is that now part of this target schedule, or is that a separate plugin?
No, it's separate. It's called the Web Session History Viewer.
Thank you.
It's separate. And the other useful tool that's recently being developed is called the Touch and Stars. This one. So I should show this. What this does is you can start and stop your whole sequence, and this is how I do that over the phone again. So before the task, I just go on the phone, connect, and do this. So I don't even need to log in, and it has some basic statistics and image preview, but it's more of like a control session, remote control console for you. And it also links to this, and you can actually, if you want to, on the phone, switch to another target and slew and whatnot. Some fun, basic control, but more or less is like a monitoring and remote control console. There are a lot of stuff into N.I.N.A, and I think due to the limit of time, I will stop here. If there's any particular interest, if you see what I can improve, definitely we can communicate more, and I'll just leave my contact info here. Feel free to email questions, comments, whatnot.